The city hummed with the vibrancy of urban life, but amidst its bustling streets lay hidden corners where secrets whispered and shadows danced. One such corner housed a prestigious art auction where I found myself on that fateful night. As I scanned the room, the air crackled with anticipation, my gaze drawn inexorably to a particular painting. There it hung, shrouded in an aura of mystery, its colors muted, yet pulsing with an unseen energy. The figure depicted within seemed to beckon to me, its eyes following my every move with an unsettling intensity. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I approached, my heart pounding. The bidding began, a flurry of numbers and gestures as eager collectors vied for ownership of the enigmatic artwork. The gavel slammed down, the echo reverberating through the auction hall. A triumphant smile spread as the auctioneer declared the painting mine. "Congratulations, Mr. Thornton," he announced, his voice laced with a hint of awe as if surprised by my relentless bidding war. The painting, titled Desolation, had captivated me from the moment I saw it. It wasn't the subject itself, a lone figure silhouetted against a desolate landscape, but the raw agony etched on the figure's face. It was an emotion so vivid, so raw, that it seemed to reach out and touch me, even across the vast, brightly lit space. Excitement thrummed through me as I drove home, the painting secured in the back of my car. I couldn't wait to hang it in my study, the perfect setting for this unique piece of art. After meticulously unpacking the canvas that night, I hung it on the wall above my mahogany desk. I spent the next few hours lost in the painting's depths. The brushstrokes, the subtle color variations, the way the light fell on the figure's gaunt face. Every detail was meticulously rendered, fueling my fascination. But it was the figure's eyes that held me captive. They were large, hollow pools of despair, reflecting a sorrow so profound it seemed to suck me into the painting. At some point, exhausted but oddly exhilarated, I decided to call it a night. As I flicked off the study lights, I paused, taking one last look at the painting. A peculiar sensation washed over me. The figure's head seemed tilted ever so slightly to the left, its eyes locked on mine with an even greater intensity. I blinked, attributing it to my tired eyes, and headed towards the bedroom. I was drawn back to the study the following day, compelled by an invisible force. Entering the room, I approached the painting. The figure's head was back in its original position, eyes downcast. Relief washed over me, dismissing the previous night's observation as a figment of my imagination. However, over the next few days, unease began to settle in. Each time I entered the study, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The silence, usually comforting in my sanctuary, now felt pregnant with hidden tension. And then I noticed it. The subtle changes began. The first time it was the figure's mouth. It seemed to curl upwards slightly, almost resembling a smirk. I dismissed it, attributing it to the changing light filtering through my study window. But the changes continued. A single tear seemed to glisten on the figure's cheek the next day. The day after, its posture seemed straighter, as if gaining a flicker of defiance. As the changes became more pronounced, I spent an unhealthy amount of time in the study, scrutinizing the painting and dissecting every detail. Sleep became elusive. My nights were plagued by nightmares mirroring the figure's ever-increasing anguish. The once awe-inspiring artwork had morphed into a source of dread. Now, staring at me with an accusatory glare, the figure seemed to feed off my growing fear. I felt its despair and torment seeping into my mind, poisoning my thoughts. One day, as I stood transfixed before the painting, I heard a voice, a husky whisper that seemed to come from within the canvas itself. It spoke in fragments, unintelligible words filled with sorrow and anger. Panic seized me. I stumbled back, flailing my arms to regain my balance. My hand hit the light switch on the wall. The room plunged into darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs as I fumbled for the light switch. The painting hung as it always had when the light flooded back in, silent and motionless. Yet the voice echoed in my head. Leaving the study, I couldn't shake the voice I heard. As I ascended the stairs to my bedroom, the weight of the day's discoveries hung heavy. Sleep was a distant memory. My eyes, perpetually bloodshot, were haunted by the image of the ever-shifting figure in the painting, its silent screams echoing in the cavernous depths of my mind. I had to understand to unravel the mystery that bound me to this tortured canvas. My days took on a new urgency, driven by an insatiable curiosity sparked by that unsettling moment. Immersed in art history, I traversed through archives and bookstores, each turning of a page, revealing fragments of Gabriel's enigmatic past. Nights blended seamlessly into days as I sifted through ancient texts and obscure references, driven by an unyielding determination to unravel the mystery that had gripped me. And then, amidst the dust and faded ink, I unearthed the key to Gabriel's story, a weathered journal, its pages whispering long-forgotten secrets. My research began with a meticulous study of the painting's provenance. Scouring through dusty auction records and faded art journals, I pieced together the fragmented history of Desolation. It led me to Gabriel, a reclusive artist whose rise to acclaim was as meteoric as his descent into obscurity. Gabriel's life was a tapestry woven with tragedy. Orphaned at a young age, he witnessed the brutal murder of his parents, an event that left a permanent scar on his soul. His art, initially vibrant and full of promise, began to reflect the darkness that had consumed him. His paintings, imbued with an unsettling sense of despair, were ostracized by the art world, and Gabriel retreated further into the shadows. My investigation then took a chilling turn. I stumbled upon a local legend, whispered in hushed tones among the townsfolk near Gabriel's last known residence. They spoke of a pact he made with a shadowy figure, a deal to capture his boundless despair onto the canvas in exchange for eternal fame. The legend claimed that Gabriel was never seen again upon completing the painting, his spirit supposedly trapped within his final masterpiece. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Gabriel wasn't just the artist, he was the figure in the painting. My empathy for him deepened. This wasn't just a painting, it was a man's soul, forever imprisoned in a vortex of his own despair. Determined to free him, I desperately searched for a way to break the curse. I delved into the forbidden corners of the internet, scouring through obscure websites and dusty libraries. I scoured ancient texts on demonology and forgotten rituals, searching for anything to escape the artist's purgatory. Days bled into weeks, fueled by a potent cocktail of coffee and desperation. Sleep, when it came, was plagued by nightmares of Gabriel's anguished face contorted in eternal pain. One night, I found hope amidst worn-out books and cryptic symbols. An obscure text, written in a forgotten language, spoke of a ritual for the release of a tormented soul. It was a complex and dangerous procedure, requiring specific ingredients and precise incantations. The consequences of failure were dire, but I was willing to risk everything to free Gabriel. Gathering the necessary items, wolfsbane, grave dust, and a single raven feather, felt like playing a game of Russian roulette with the supernatural. The ritual itself was an unnerving dance with the unknown. Chanting the archaic incantations in the dead of night, bathed in the flickering light of a single candle, I felt a presence in the room, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. As I completed the last verse, the room temperature plummeted. A gust of wind slammed the windows shut, extinguishing the candle and plunging me into darkness. Then a sound. Like a strangled sob, a low, mournful cry filled the room. I knew then that Gabriel was responding. The air crackled with spectral energy. The painting on the wall began to shimmer, its surface rippling like a disturbed pool of water. A vortex of light and shadow formed in the canvas, growing larger until it engulfed the entire painting. Exhausted but exhilarated, I collapsed to the floor, the weight of the room lifting. It did not work. Gabriel was not freed. Driven by a need for answers, I sought experts, historians, demonologists, and anyone who could shed light on the mysteries surrounding the painting and the ritual I attempted. My desperation was palpable, and most dismissed me as a delusional art collector obsessed with a morbid fantasy. Finally, a grizzled old professor, his eyes clouded with skepticism. Still, his voice, laced with a hint of intrigue, sat through my frantic retelling of the events. He examined the painting, running his calloused fingers across the rough surface. He then delved into his vast library, returning hours later with a leather-bound book, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. As he spoke, a sense of dread settled over me. He spoke of an ancient text, a forbidden tome detailing a chilling legend. It spoke of a cursed painting, not unlike the one that once held Gabriel's soul, which possessed the ability to devour those who dared to gaze upon it for too long. The souls, the text claimed, were trapped within the painting, forever bound to its canvas. He continued, his voice barely a whisper. And the only way to break the curse, to release a soul trapped within, is to offer another in its place. My heart hammered against my ribs. The implication was clear. My desperate attempt to free Gabriel had likely failed, and the canvas remained a gateway to the same fate. Days morphed into weeks. The professor's revelation hung over me like a storm cloud, its weight crushing my spirit. Sleep became a stranger, replaced by a paralyzing fear. Once a symbol of hope, the painting mocked me. Desperation, a bitter and potent cocktail, began to cloud my judgment. I was convinced I had to act to find a way out of this dreadful situation before it consumed me completely. Moral compasses tend to lose their bearings in the face of impending doom. A chilling thought, a grotesque solution, began to take root in my mind. Someone would have to take Gabriel's place and become the new hostage of the cursed canvas. The ethical implications were non-existent at this point. All that remained was a cold, calculating determination. My gaze fell upon Edward, my arrogant and obnoxious neighbor. We'd never seen eye to eye, a constant source of petty annoyance. In a twisted sense, he was the perfect candidate. I lured him to my study with a fabricated invitation, the promise of a rare vintage wine. He entered, his usual smugness plastered across his face. A flicker of curiosity crossed his features as he turned towards the painting. "Who is this a painting of?" he asked, his voice laced with curiosity. I offered a forced smile, reaching for the hidden incantation book. "An artist by the name of Gabriel," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. Before he could react, I launched into the ritual, the ancient words spilling out of my dry mouth. The room dipped into an unnatural chill. Edward's face contorted in confusion, then terror as he realized his predicament. A dark vortex materialized over Edward, its edges swirling with an ominous energy. As I chanted the final words, a horrifying realization slammed into me. The professor had never mentioned a way to control who the painting would take. Edward and I began to fade, our bodies dissolving into wispy tendrils of light. He screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror echoing through the room. Yet my own scream died in my throat, choked by the chilling realization of my own folly. We were both drawn towards the vortex, our fates intertwined by a desperate act and a horrifying mistake. Whether I had succeeded in releasing Gabriel's soul, or merely condemned myself and Edward to join him in a shared eternal torment, I would never know. The darkness swallowed us whole, the painting the only witness to the horror it had unleashed. Thank you for joining us on another spine-tingling journey into the realms of the supernatural on Wicked Haunting Tales. If you relish the thrill of mysteries that send shivers down your spine and stories that linger in the shadows, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a wicked tale. Your support keeps the darkness alive. Until next time, brace yourself for more chilling tales that will leave you questioning reality. Stay haunted, stay wicked.